Namaskar viewers, hello and welcome to Sansad TV. I am Tina Jha, you're watching Perspective. In this edition of our program, we will be talking about autism with a focus on awareness, acceptance and advocacy for the needs of individuals with autism as well as their families. The month of April is significant globally for this cause. While the 2nd of April is observed as World Autism Awareness Day, the whole month of April is now being celebrated as Autism Awareness and Acceptance Month in different parts of the world. The goal is to help improve the quality of life of those with autism. According to the World Health Organization, autism, also referred to as autism spectrum disorder, constitutes a diverse group of conditions related to development of the brain. Characteristics may be detected in early childhood, but autism is often not diagnosed until much later. Globally, 1 in 100 children has autism. The United Nations says the rate of autism in all regions of the world is high, largely because of lack of understanding, which has a tremendous impact on the individuals, their families, and also the communities. And therefore, it is very important for societies worldwide to learn more about autism, to improve early diagnosis, to learn more about the experiences of autistic people, and most importantly, to build more welcoming and inclusive communities to support people with autism. So what steps are being taken to make the society more inclusive and sensitive to the needs of those with autism? What are the concerns and challenges of individuals with autism and their families? What causes autism? How to diagnose it? What should parents do if their child is diagnosed with autism? These are some of the aspects that we will be talking about on the show today with 3 esteemed guests joining us on the program. So let me first introduce them to you. I have with me Mr. Sundar Rajan, President, Autism Society of India, Dr. Imran Noorani, Chief Psychologist, Center for Developmental and Behavioral Pediatrics, Institute of Child Health, Sir Gangaram Hospital, New Delhi, and Mr. Navneet Sharma. He's a parent of a child with autism. Thank you, gentlemen, for joining me on this edition of the program on Sansad TV. Dr. Noorani, let me, in fact, begin the program today with you. The World Health Organization numbers say 1 in 100 children has autism globally. Now, if we begin by understanding first, what causes autism?
Yeah, Tina, we don't have any conclusive studies or any medical markers or biomarkers for autism as of now. It is considered to be a crosstalk of thousands of genes plus some environmental concerns and conditions that come together and result in autism spectrum disorder. There are associated comorbid conditions with autism, which can be diagnosed through imaging or other medical or blood evaluations. But per se, till now, for autism spectrum disorder, there is no medical marker or a medical diagnosis which can be done through blood testing or imaging these facilities. How autism spectrum disorder is diagnosed is through a batteries of psychological tests or developmental evaluations, which involve a lot of questionnaires, clinical evaluation by a developmental pediatrician and a psychologist, plus a team of other rehabilitation and allied professionals. The reason why we don't have any short-term interventions or clear-cut goals for clear-cut medical interventions for autism as of now is because of this lacuna that we don't have any medical tests to diagnose autism spectrum disorder.
And perhaps that's why the United Nations says that it is the lack of understanding leading to late diagnosis, which is causing, autism in several people and barring regions. I mean, it's prevalent across all regions worldwide. So 1 in 100 children is perhaps what explains. So I'll come back to you and try and understand what can parents do to, help early diagnosis. What are the symptoms, the behavioral patterns that can help parents take the child to the doctor? That is something that is very important to understand. So that is something I'll come back to you and understand. But let me go across to Mr. Rajan in the meanwhile. As someone who's been associated with this cause, Mr. Rajan, for several years, and the most important part is every year we are celebrating, we are observing World Autism Awareness Day. In fact, for several years now, in several countries, the day is being redefined. So it's not World Autism Awareness Day anymore. There is World Autism Acceptance Day. Over the years, have you seen the world becoming more aware and more sensitive to the needs of those who are autistic?
Absolutely, yeah. Uh, we have been existing for the last 15 years, and we have been consistently engaging the complete society in the awareness program. And right from my child being a 2.5-year-old boy, today he's a 28-year-old boy. So we have come along a long journey. Every year we use all the opportunities for us to make the people aware that autism is a really a serious disability. At the same time, if autism can be uh, handled in the correct perspective by at the right time, and right intervention is provided for these children, they can you can see the kind of potential they can exhibit in some cases. There are, of course, there are two types of autism. One is a high functioning and others are low functioning children. So both these perspectives have shown a lot of improvements when proper intervention is provided to them. So as far as awareness is concerned, yes, we have uh, consistently engaged the government. We have consistently engaged the corporate sectors. We have consistently been with the public for a long time. And then today, in fact, it took almost a lot of time for us to get autism included in the Disability Act. And finally, we achieved that also. That is a big milestone that we achieved. So now a lot of people are aware about autism, and a lot of people are very sensitive about this particular disability and support us in many ways.
Absolutely, and that's the theme also of the World Autism Awareness Month as well. Mr. Sharma, let me bring that question to you. The 3 A's that the focus is of World Autism Awareness Month is awareness, acceptance, and advocacy. The goal is to improve the lives of those who are not just autistic, but also their families. So basically sensitizing their needs and making lives better for them. But all of this sounds good when it comes to spreading awareness, making people talk about this as a cause. But someone who experiences it firsthand, as a parent of an autistic child, what are the challenges that you face, not just in bringing up your child, but in terms of acceptance from society, from extended families?
Yeah, Tina, actually, the first thing is very rightly you have said acceptance is the first A. In fact, these challenges start from day one. Since my son was diagnosed with autism, we have been facing these issues. But I agree with Mr. Rajan that gradually this actually acceptance in the society is growing. In the sense that now people don't look at these kids differently. They are taking a very sympathetic and very understanding view for the kids. But it is a process that is still a long way to achieve, and a lot of work needs to be done on that.
Absolutely. So a long way to go before we actually can claim to be an inclusive society which celebrates people with differences as well. But before I go across to Mr. Nurani and speak about diagnosis, what is causing the delay, let me come back to you, Mr. Rajan, and take a quick opinion on how the pandemic has sort of exacerbated inequalities, to say. All of us know the pandemic was a difficult time for everyone across the world. But when we talk about people with special needs who need special care, the pandemic has been a very, very tough period. So can we say that the last 2 years has been very, very difficult for those who who are autistic, and also for their families in terms of coping up with the new challenges that we were facing?
Yeah, absolutely. The pandemic was a big challenge to us, in the sense that generally these children are used to certain routines. And during the pandemic, when the lockdown was declared, these children were totally confused. And in a confused state, their behavior pattern also started changing. So one side, we should handle their behavior patterns. A second thing is we should adhere to the lockdown situations. And at the same time, we in Autism Society of India coordinated a lot of work with the government again. In fact, I would be very grateful to the government who stepped in very aggressively to support us, right from the Disability Commissioner to the Director of Disability. We are in touch with them, and they are also very supportive to us. There were occasions where a parent has to travel from one state to another state. During that time, there is a requirement of institutional quarantine. In such situations, we requested the disability commissioner, because these children will not understand what is institutional quarantine. So they immediately, we given them a guarantee that don't worry, these parents we'll take responsibility for the parents to not move out of any particular location. So they were permitted home quarantine immediately without any giving any gap. So this helped us a lot as a parent. Many parents were grateful to us, because one side we coordinated with the government, other side we are also supporting the parents, and government also came in created various structures in terms of several IAS officers came forward to support us, and there were one or two corporate organizations who also came forward, like Wipro and other organizations came forward to fill in the gap and give us space and area where these children can be kept comfortably. So we had it was a very tough experience for us, but at the same time, we got a good support from the government, and also the general corporate sector also came forward to support us with their help. We were able to tide over the situation.
So very encouraging to hear that not just awareness has been increasing over the last few years, there is increasing acceptance, as Mr. Sharma was saying, but also that members of civil society, members of the government have been putting efforts to make lives easier for the autistic people. But the challenge remains in early diagnosis. So let me bring that question back to Dr. Noorani. It's a huge concern. So although we do not know one particular cause of autism, I think the biggest challenge, the biggest hurdle that we have to tide over is early diagnosis. And if you could also help us and our viewers understand, what are the behavioral patterns that are visible among children who are autistic? For parents, when should they know that they need to take their child to the doctor?
Right. It actually starts from very early in the age, when a child at the age of 3 to 5 months of age has to give me a social smile back, isn't it? If a child is missing on any of the early developmental milestones, you said that what is missing? Missing is that a young parent, recently married, don't know anything majorly, they don't know about the developmental milestones of a child in the first few years of the life, because they are so busy in their work and other things are there. New marriage has happened. They are not being given the information about early milestones checklists. That is where a role of a pediatrician comes into play. Whenever, or a gynecologist, when a child is born, there should be a checklist, or there should be a pamphlet in the hand of a young parent who is given the developmental milestone tracker, so that a parent will be able to see that from 3 to 5 months of age, if my child is not following objects, if my child is not maintaining eye contact with me, if my child is not giving me social smile, I'm smiling at him or her, he or she is not giving me that social smile back. If the child is not able to respond to different sounds, these are called early red flag signs in a child, which might result in any kind of a developmental delay or a developmental disorder, which can be autism spectrum disorder. In fact, we have seen in our clinical practices at Child Development Clinic that when young parents who are well-informed parents bring their children early, for example, at the age of 6 months, and they raise the concern that my child is not giving me eye contact, or my child is not able to pay attention towards my facial gestures, these are the kids who can be picked up early. Even if the diagnosis is done by 18 months of age, we don't need to diagnose a child and wait for the diagnosis of autism spectrum disorder. This is a very, very important thing, because most clinicians, many parents think that if the diagnosis is not done till 3 years of age, we can wait and watch. That is where we miss the golden period of 0 to 3 years of early intervention, and when the brain development of 90% takes place by 5 years of age. If the red flag signs, not following instructions, not looking at me, not giving me social smile, poor joint attention, means if I'm pointing to something, child is not able to look at that and look back at me. There is lack of sharing of joy and excitement. And if he or she is not able to register a caregiver, if there is no separation anxiety, or for example, if they don't have this stranger anxiety, and these kinds of milestones can be tracked If any of this is missing, we don't say that we don't say that every child will be looking at me at 3 months of age and smiling. No, it can be. There is a range from 3 to 5 months. There is a range for a child from 10 to 14 months that my child should be able to speak first meaningful word. When I say meaningful word, it means it's not like pa, pa, pa. No, it is like only directing or labeling his or her father as papa or mama. This is called a meaningful word utterance. Usually we have these myths that boys speak late. So we can wait for it. This is
Absolutely.
an absolute
I think
myth.
that's
Yes.
very important. In India, what we generally see is, abhi bachcha hai, thoda bada hoga to shayad theek ho jayega. Mr. Sharma, when was the time that you got to know that your child is autistic? Over the years, if you could take us and our viewers through how your experience has been, and especially if you talk about the last 2 years, how did you help your child cope up with the pandemic?
Yeah, since actually I am part of the Indian Navy, so my son was born, I was posted in Visakhapatnam. And I agree with Dr. Noorani that the perception, in fact, the doctors also said, since he's a boy, boys take time.
Yes.
So in that way, we were very relaxed. Okay, with time he'll recover, or maybe he'll start picking up things. Then I was transferred from Visakhapatnam to Delhi. That is when we the actual diagnosis happened, and we came to know that he's autistic. So I fully agree that this general perception, it goes on, boys take time and girls are very fast. It happened in our case also. Maybe if the intervention had started earlier, the things would have been different, maybe.
Yes.
And as the second question that you were asking, last 2 years have been very, very challenging and very difficult. Because both my son, actually, he is in a hostel since he is the only child. So as per the doctor's advice, since he does not have any sibling, so he was developing different behaviors after coming back from the special school. So we had put him in a hostel. So during pandemic, what has happened, myself and my wife, presently I'm posted in Mumbai, we were stuck in Mumbai and he was there in hostel in Noida. So in fact, I could travel because this permission was there for the Navy, but my wife couldn't travel. And during the entire lockdown and the period after that, we really struggled. And he was so emotionally drained and so emotionally low that he lost almost 8 kgs of weight. So it was very challenging, and actually, how to put it across.
Certainly, I completely understand. It's been a very challenging time, but fortunately, I mean, we've left behind the times of the pandemic. Hopefully, we are returning towards normalcy and things should get better from here. But Mr. Rajan, coming back to you to understand, when we talk about inclusivity, it sounds very good, but in a system wherein, we are driven by perceptions, as Dr. Noorani and Mr. Sharma both pointed out. In fact, I am mother to a boy, and I mean, he started speaking quite early in the age. Within the first year, he started speaking. So people would, look at me in surprise and say, oh, very rare for boys to actually, begin talking and walking so early in the age, because boys take their own sweet time. So that is something that I have also been used to hearing, and very rightly said, this is a perception which goes around driving our society. But when we talk about inclusivity, do you think in our society where, we are driven by such perceptions, inclusivity, especially education institutionals, it's easier to say than do it actually?
Regarding this subject matter, we are still way behind in making the institutional accept inclusivity. In fact, we are this year we have an agenda to work towards inclusivity in more aggressive manner by engaging a lot of schools and other areas to make them understand that inclusivity helps these children. And in inclusivity, we have regular children. In fact, regular children will become more sensitive to the environment by having a child with disability in the same campus. So this will help inclusivity. Also, if you see, as per RCI, Rehabilitation Council of India, we have specific kind of educational structure given by government and certificates are given. Only thing that is really missing with them is we need a kind of recognition to some people, because we need a lot of caregivers to take care of such children. We don't need any basic stringent qualification for the RCA to give a certification. We are requesting them to be a little lenient in giving some recognized, if not a diploma or some other recognition for caregivers who are lesser educated, because they are the one who really come forward to, and we can afford them for many schools for caregivers. So this is the one point that is missing with the RCI, which we are working with them to make them understand that we need to literally slightly modify the education system, the training structures given by RCI, so that more and more caregivers can be brought into the mainstream, and our children will be helped a lot with government recognized kind of a training structure and proper kind of a, what do you call it, salary structure and all those kind of things that will help
Yes.
lot of schools and parents like us. Because end of the day, if you see, we cannot create a permanent rehabilitation home for all the children. Their own home is their permanent home.
Yes.
So if you have proper caregiver structure in place, definitely it's going to help the parents immediately.
That's right, Mr. Sharma. So, mainstream is the key word here. And when we talk about inclusivity, this is something that we have to take care of in the times to come to ensure that we do not leave anyone behind. That's the larger goal of achieving the Sustainable Development Goal by 2030. Of course, there's been a little setback because of the pandemic, but what is the kind of support that one would require when we talk about, strengthening our caregiving mechanism, both in terms of home care, also institutional mechanisms that can be set in place? What is the kind of support that the government is providing at the moment, or you expect in the times to come more kind of such efforts that are required?
What I believe is that, we have been doing interventions for long. As I see two parents here struggling in this pandemic times of 2.5 years, thankfully we came up with the plan of doing dedicated parent training modules, wherein we could connect to all of our parents who are doing therapies with us, and we started imparting direct education and caregiver training so that they are not dependent on the therapists for training and skill-based interventions. One thing which is very important is that a parent has to understand that it is ultimately a parent who is going to take that child through this journey of autism. For that, they need to learn and they need to upgrade themselves with the skills of behavior modifications, a little bit of special education teaching. I know it's a psychological burden already on a parent, and if you ask them that now you have to do the interventions, it adds on to the burden. But trust me that if you get over with these difficulties, it's not something which a parent cannot do. Parent training should be the utmost important thing in autism interventions. Second, the caregivers should be given access in schools. For example, in Delhi, the Delhi government is taking it very seriously. They are trying to get a special educator in the classrooms or in the schools. They are getting counselors ready for the same. This is helping in a manner wherein a parent is not called on by every other teacher and being complained about their child. There is a particular dedicated person who they raise their concerns, and they are communicating with the parent who are sensitized enough for the same. Inclusion in a real sense is when there is an open door policy for all our children with autism spectrum disorder. They are being given individual attentions in the schools and classrooms and are being made to sit with the rest of the 40 children in the classroom for half an hour, 2 hours, or 3 hours, as per the level of the autism spectrum disorder. Having said that, the last line which I'll add here is that what should be done for enhancing the outcomes of these children is a multidisciplinary approach, because most of the times a parent doesn't know why they have to go for the interventions.
Yes.
Who is the right doctor? Because they will be visiting a neurologist separately, they will be visiting a psychiatrist separately, a developmental pediatrician separately. Please understand, it is the work of a unit together.
Let me in the meanwhile get in Dr. Rajan. You wanted to make a point on what should be done. Dr. Nurani pointed out about how a multidisciplinary approach is required to enhance the outcomes of those who have autism. What is your take? How do you look at the future?
As I told you, the fundamental thing that is need of the hour is for the RCA to bring in. They have got a good structured education program, but we need little low-end caregivers into the stream. And these low-end caregivers should be recognized by the government with certain certification process that will help us to bring in more and more caregivers into the stream, because we need more caregivers. In fact, from practical point of view, it is the husband and wife. The burden is always on the husband and wife. They are always burdened with the question, does after us, what next? That one question always lingers with the parents every time.
Yes.
At the same time, if you see, we have come across one or two cases where in such situation, the husband and wife should stay together. But unfortunately, we found on one case, the husband just abandoning the family and leaving the wife alone to manage the child. In another case, we found the wife committed a suicide and the husband is alone. So we are facing such kind of severe challenging situations. And we are, of course, we are closely working with a lot of special schools around us in Bangalore. And across the country also, we are in touch with all the organizations that is associated with autism to find out what are the practical difficulties they are facing and how we can bring in. But the need of the hour is we need more and more low-end caregivers to come into the stream with proper recognition or certificate from the government.
Absolutely. So that parents do not have to keep thinking about what happens to our child after us. Mr. Sharma,
Absolutely.
One last comment from you on what is the kind of change that you would want to see so that living with autism is not a bane, not just for the child who is suffering, but also for the families. What is the kind of change that you would witness so that we ensure that we achieve the goal of leaving no one behind in the right sense?
Actually, I just like to take that point forward, what Mr. Rajan was saying, actually, because from inclusion comes acceptance. And the point here is, like I've seen nowadays, in normal schools also, it is mandatory to kids that intake of special kids. Now from that, even the kids, the awareness is increasing and kids are teaching their parents, yes, mama, papa, I have a similar kind of kid in my school. So that acceptance is coming from inclusivity. And I also agree with Dr. Noorani, that parents should not be running from pillar to post. We need to have a setup which is a very comprehensive and all the specialists are available at one place.
That's right.
Ultimately, that in the long run will be actually very beneficial. And because as such, Dr. Noorani is already saying parents are burdened psychologically when we have an autistic kid. So whatever relief can be provided in any form, maybe it is acceptance, inclusion, or a comprehensive setup, everything will be a very positive step in the right direction.
Certainly, very important. So, you know, what we've spoken about, that even though there is awareness, increased awareness and increased acceptance in society for those who are autistic, it's a long way ahead to actually claim that we are a society that celebrates differences of all kinds. Dr. Sharma has put forth the kind of concerns, the challenges which parents keep facing, and Dr. Rajan has rightly pointed out how we need to evolve as a society. So the kind of changes that we need to think about as a whole. And Dr. Noorani has taken us through how it's a multidisciplinary approach that's required. So the parents should not be running from pillar to post. As it is, they are psychologically burdened because of the challenges that they face each day in raising an autistic child. So things should be much simpler for them. They should be provided all kinds of support, and all our efforts should be, as a society, in ensuring that life is very simple and easy for those who are autistic as well as for their families. So we hope one day we will be able to achieve this very goal and have a truly inclusive society. With that, I'll have to wrap up the discussion today. Thank you, gentlemen, for joining us on the program on Sansad TV and sharing your thoughts, your perspectives with us on the World Autism Awareness Month. So that's it from us on this edition of Perspective today. Thanks very much to all our viewers as well for their time. See you again next week. Thanks very much.